Hi everyone, welcome to another video. So in this video, we'll try and understand the important points or considerations as far as GST is concerned for freelancers, specifically for freelancers in 2026. Now, when you talk about freelancers, these are basically people who are providing mostly services online and are self-employed. So they are very less involved in supply of goods and mostly involved in supply of services, maybe directly giving services online to the end client or customer or through an e-commerce aggregator platform, but they're self-employed and mostly involved in online delivery of services. So the focus of today's video is going to be for freelancers and what are the important points to be kept in mind as far as GST is concerned, especially in 2026. So during the course of the entire video, we'll talk about different segments of GST. We'll talk about registration and why it is important and why it's the first important step for a freelancer when you're thinking about GST. We'll then look on to return filing. There are a lot of returns these days, especially for an individual, a proprietor, LLP as well as a company. But we'll find out the basics as in the threshold limits for filing a return. We then look into invoicing, wherein there are actually GST prescribed rules for raising a legal tax invoice. We also look into the rates that are involved in provision of services, especially under GST, and then the concept of GST credits and why it is going to be beneficial for you, where you can take the credits incurred on your GST purchases. And finally, when you're involved in the provision of services outside India or export of services, what are the important considerations to be kept in mind? So let's do a deep dive for each of these segments and understand the basic provisions concerning all these. Coming to registration. Well, under this segment, the basic criteria for turnover threshold is 20 lakhs and 40 lakhs, which basically means that at any point in time, if your aggregate turnover is exceeding 20 lakhs for services and 40 lakhs for goods, then within 30 days of you becoming liable, you need to apply for a GST registration. So within 30 days, apply for a GST registration and get a GST identification number or a GST number. So when we talk about freelancers, and like I said, 95% is involved in provision of services, and therefore the upper limit as far as registration is concerned is 20 lakhs. The moment you cross 20 lakhs aggregate turnover at any point in time in a financial year, then within 30 days, you must obtain a GST registration number. Now, what if you are involved in interstate supplies? Now, had you been providing goods, even though your turnover threshold is not exceeding 40 lakhs, if you are involved in supply of goods interstate, then you mandatorily need a GST registration, even if your turnover limit is below 40 lakhs. But this does not apply for services. In this present case, if you're a freelancer providing online services, then even though you're involved in interstate supply, you still have to go by the turnover threshold of 20 lakhs. So if you're below 20 lakhs turnover threshold, you're involved in intrastate or interstate supply, still look at the turnover threshold level. Only if it crosses, get a GST number within 30 days, register within 30 days. Now, if you're providing services through e-commerce platforms or e-commerce operators, then irrespective of the turnover threshold, you need to obtain a GST registration. So in this particular case, you don't have to look at any turnover thresholds. Even if your turnover is below 20 lakhs, the moment you supply through an e-commerce platform, you need to get a mandatory GST registration. And this applies for goods as well. Now, once you become liable for GST registration, you have two options: to be registered as a normal taxpayer or as a composition taxpayer. Now, the benefit of going under the composition scheme is that, one, you end up paying, the main benefit is that you end up paying a low amount of GST, because the GST rate is extremely low. Instead of 18% standard GST under the normal scheme, you end up paying only a 6% GST on your taxable value. Now, who all can come under the composition scheme? Two things. One, your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year should not cross 50 lakhs. So 50 lakhs is the cap. The moment you cross 50 lakhs, one, you need to get a GST registration. Two, you need to go under the normal scheme. But if you're, say, having a turnover threshold aggregate in the previous financial year of, let's say, 45 lakhs, then you are liable for a GST registration, but you can register yourself as a composition taxpayer because your turnover threshold aggregate in the preceding financial year is not exceeding 50 lakhs. And if that's the condition, then you can end up paying a meager GST, only 6% on the taxable value, which is 3% CGST, 3% IGST. But the catch here is that you cannot be involved in interstate supply of services. Now, mostly what happens is for freelancers who are doing online business, online professional services, it so happens that you end up providing services to people outside your state as well. So it becomes an interstate supply. And then you cannot go for composition, you should go for the normal scheme only. But if you are a tax person, if you are a freelancer providing online services only to the people within your own state, then it becomes an intrastate supply only. You can still be under the composition scheme provided your turnover threshold stays within the limit of 50 lakhs in the preceding financial year. This was about GST registration. Coming to return filing. Now, this topic is actually complicated because it has a lot of returns. We talk about GST R1, 3B, 4, 8, 7, 10 and all that. But for the purpose and relevance of this particular video, we'll just understand what is the criteria or the frequency of filing a GST return. Now, if your aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year is below 5 crores, which is a huge limit, then you have the option to go for a quarterly filing option scheme. It's called the quarterly return monthly payment scheme. So if you have, let's say, sale in a particular month, you have to pay GST for that particular month. But as far as your filing compliance is concerned, you only have to do at the end of a particular quarter. So 4 times a year because there are 4 quarters, right? So payment comes every 12 months if you have sales every month. But as far as filing process is concerned, you need to do only 4 times a year, once every quarter, because it's a quarterly return filing option. But the moment your aggregate turnover crosses 5 crores, then you have no other option but to mandatorily go for a monthly filing option where you pay GST on a monthly basis and file the return. So if you had been under the quarterly return monthly payment scheme, the quarterly scheme, then you only end up filing every 4 times. So two basic returns GST are 1 and 3B into 4 is 8 returns in a year. Compared to monthly where you have to file 2 returns in a month, so into 12, 24 returns in a year. So 24 versus 8, that is a substantial change. If you go for a quarterly filing option, you have less compliance in terms of return filing than the monthly compliance return filing option. Coming to invoicing. Now, this is something which a lot of freelancers tend to ignore, omit, miss out because of lack of knowledge. Now, the moment you deliver your service, you are bound to raise an invoice. Now, raising an invoice on a plain piece of paper or on a Word document is not the correct approach, because raising an invoice is also guided by the GST rules, where it says that the moment you charge GST on a particular invoice, it becomes a legal tax invoice. And amongst other particulars in this particular tax invoice, you need to ensure that you mention your GST number, your place of supply. Now, what is this? If you're sitting in Mumbai and you're providing services to a person in Delhi, then for the purpose of providing services, your place of supply is going to be Delhi. That's a location of recipient, even though you're sitting in Mumbai and providing services online. But under the place supply rules, it is said that your POS, as far as service provision is concerned, will be the place of the recipient. That means the other state. And therefore, your service would be an interstate service and you'll have to charge IGST. So POS or place supply mention is important. Along with that, you also need to mention something that people ignore is the SAC, Service Accounting Code. Now, this is again prescribed by the GST department, where you have codes for goods as well as services. For example, 9983. These codes come in 4 digits or 6 digits. 9983, for example, is for information technology services. So you put the code and the rate attached to this code is, let's say, 18%. So the rate of GST is not something that comes from the air. You will have to determine from the SAC code. The SAC code will prescribe the rate for that particular type of service. And of course, mention the type of GST and GST amount. In this particular case, if you're providing interstate supply, it becomes a IGST. So these are the important points to be kept in mind as far as raising a tax invoice is concerned. Coming to 2 small topics. One is rate of GST. 95% of services are chargeable at 18% rate of GST, very few at 5%. 5% is typically for goods. So if you are a freelancer involved in online supply of services, then 18% is your rate of GST. As far as GST credits are concerned, now this is normally a highly litigated area, but we don't go into litigation in this particular video. We'll stay within the basics. And what you need to understand as a freelancer as far as GST credits are concerned is that first identify what are your business expenses and your personal expenses. So if you are a freelancer providing consulting services, legal services, interior decoration, architectural services, whatever, find out, okay, what are my expenses for my business and what are the expenses for my personal needs. So if you're walking into a grocery store and buying provisions of grocery for your daily living, that exclusively becomes a personal expenses. But if you're going to a store and buying a laptop or some kind of stationery which you use for your service business, you can classify that as a business expense. And whatever GST you incur on those business expenses, you can take a credit of the same, and that credit you can utilize against the liability on your sales or the GST liability on your sales. That set of provisions is applicable under GST, and this is what is applicable for any taxpayer registered under GST. So find out what is your business expense, what is your personal expense, and within your business expense, find out what are your eligible credits and what are your ineligible credits. If you're buying a vehicle, be it any type of vehicle for own purpose or business purpose, you cannot take GST credit on the same, because although you'll end up paying GST to the car dealer, you cannot take a credit of the same because that is blocked under the GST Act. Similarly, if you are buying health insurance, life insurance and all that, these are personal kind of expenses, you cannot take GST credit. Let's say you're hosting a training or an internal training session in one of the hotels, you are incurring F&B charges. F&B charges, again, the GST that you pay on that is blocked. You cannot take a credit of the same. So all kinds of personal expenses, all kinds of other expenses prescribed under the GST blocked section, you cannot take a credit of the same. But any other business expense that you incur, the GST that you pay on the same, you can take it as a credit, which will help you save tax when you sell services, because you can set it off. Coming to services provided outside India, it so happens that when you become an established freelancer providing online services, you tend to find clients or customers outside India. Therefore, you will end up providing services outside India, or you will be known as an exporter of services. So one thing is you need to obtain a import-export code. Now that is also relevant because most people avoid this. They think it's only for goods supply outside India. But even if you are a exporter of service, you still need to apply a import-export code. But coming into GST, under GST, you have two legs of export. Now, you can be an exporter of services wherein you pay IGST and then claim a refund of the same. Because the government of India tells you that you are doing a great deed for the country by exporting services and bring in foreign currency. So we'll give you two options. One, you export out services, pay GST and then claim a refund of the same. Or you enter into a bond or a letter of undertaking with the government, which is an online form. You sign the LUT and then you can export services without the payment of GST, and then you can claim a refund. You can claim a refund of the accumulated GST credit that you incurred on your purchases. Because what happens is when you're exporting out services without GST, you have nothing to set it off. So when you have nothing to set it off, your purchase GST lies accumulated, your eligible purchase credits lies accumulated, and you can claim a refund of the same under GST. So two mechanisms or two methods under which you can provide services as far as GST is concerned outside India. So this was a video to make you understand about the important considerations or provisions that you should keep in mind if you're a freelancer, especially for GST in 2026. Well, I hope I was able to make things clear in this particular video. If you like the video, you could show support to us by hitting the like button. If you want more videos these on a regular basis through way of notifications, you could also take a hitting on the subscribe button. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and thank you.